the middle of the winter here in Tennessee, and while it's not freezing out, it's still pretty cold. Either way, it's a great time for me to do a video that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and that's to go through the problems that came up with the 2GR and the 2GR swap with this car. I ran into several things, and I just wanted to talk about those things and what the solutions have been along the way. From the very first startup, we noticed a buzz on the exhaust that I didn't like at all. The buzz was on deceleration, and so it would rev up nice with that sound we all love, but as the RPMs dropped, it'd just give a bzzz sound. So naturally, I went down the road trying to find out what was causing the buzz. I put a different Burke exhaust on. I put a Fujitsu Legalis R exhaust on it. Even swapping these different mufflers out, same buzz, so I had nothing to do with the muffler. I relieved potential contact points with the Y pipe on the motor, transmission, you know, wherever it might be touching and reverberating. Relieved all those points, there was nothing touching. I don't know if I'm getting anywhere with the exhaust buzzing issue, but at least by process of elimination, I'm figuring out what is not causing the buzz. I removed the tin from the firewall. Still buzzed. I removed the adapter pipe. Still buzzed. It was loud, but still had the same buzzing coming from the Y pipe or back towards the motor. I don't think it's anything rattling in the engine bay. Certainly not the tin. It's not the exhaust itself, not the muffler itself. It's not the adapter pipe from the Y pipe to the Burke exhaust. Oh, and I did start the car and rev it a little bit with just the headers on, which was quite loud, and definitely that back pressure has a rumbling and a resonating and a popping, but hard to discern if it's the buzzing sound. So I think it's going to be undetermined if the buzz is from the headers to the header interface with the motor, or if that noise is coming from the headers back. However, I think this is what I'm going to tackle next with the Y pipe. Yeah, so the excess material, I think might resonate when the back pressure is coming back through. So I'm gonna try to take a Dremel, kind of take the excess flat metal off of that. If it's not that, then possibly these flex pipes are resonating, because definitely material that could resonate with a lot of vibration. And we'll see what happens. Well, none of my fixes have worked. The exhaust still buzzes like crazy, and it's really ticking me off, honestly. Here's what it sounds like. So really, I just kind of figured it was the combination of the TCS Y pipe and the cast headers, unfortunately. The solution ultimately was I found some of Frankenstein Motorworks tubular headers, put those on with a Wilhelm Motorworks Y pipe, and the buzz went away. There's no buzz with that particular combo, and the sound is just great. And so I've been enjoying that. For whatever losses may have resulted from losing the cast headers and the other Y pipe, it's kind of worth it to me to have that exhaust note that I was looking for and not have that buzz on deceleration. So that was that. That was the exhaust buzz fix. Then, and I've seen this, but most people end up with MAF codes and O2 sensor codes, too lean, bank 1, bank 2. On the MAF codes, that ended up being a pretty easy fix. This is the MAF code that comes up. And I had gone for this part number to begin with. And the fix was going for this part number on the MAF code. So this one was actually a used one I got off of eBay, and it caused the code to go away and solve that problem. So, no on that part number. Yes on that part number for the MAF sensor. The codes that kept popping up for the O2 sensors for bank 1, bank 2, too lean, were pretty consistent for both sides. So I had purchased cheap eBay O2 sensors at the beginning. I sprung for the Toyota OEM O2 sensors, put those in. Those codes never came back. So that was an easy solution, just use the right parts. Now, I don't know if it was related to either of those. I did have a little bit of an issue with the Purge Valve. I don't know if it tripped any codes or if it caused any idle issues. I don't remember. But what I do know is it had a ticking sound. I've developed a little squeaky sound. Noise is coming from. If I pinch this, that squeaking noise goes away. And that ticking sound I didn't feel was right. But anyway, the solution to that was to just lose the purge valve altogether. And I'll show you here what I did for that. Here's where the purge valve used to be, right here. And I forget which port here had the little vacuum hose going to it. But obviously those were capped off. And then the line that came out of it would have come to the top of the charcoal canister here. So just added a little length and put this little breather filter here. So any fumes that do end up coming up, I guess just evaporate there, release there. I've never really noticed fumes, raw fuel fumes. So I guess the charcoal canister is still doing its job. But anyway, that ticking went away, obviously, because the sensor was removed. And that was the solution there. So those were the two solutions for the MAF codes and the O2 sensor codes. All right, so the next one was a real bummer. And that was, I kept shredding the Serpentine Belt. And I won't go through all the steps I took to try to diagnose it, but in the end, again, was a cheap part that I bought. Before putting the motor in, I had picked up a new tensioner off of eBay, just mainly to make it look nice. But so I bought a brand new one from eBay, and it was not aligned. So I think I have some video that I'll post here showing the difference between the two. Assuming all things equal on these brackets and that the floor is level, that this pulley wheel and I guess the tensioner part of it, the spring part of it, the interface with the bracket itself is at an angle. So what would happen is, as the belt was spinning, it would walk it off a little. The belt would ride up on one of the other pulleys that had a little lip on it, and it would just eat through it until it shredded it. So it took me a couple belts and some back and forth with pulleys and whatnot to figure out that it was the tensioner. But in the end, don't use a cheap eBay tensioner. Get the OEM Toyota part so you don't have a problem with the Serpentine Belt breaking. So that was that solution. One thing I did forget to add to this list was, unfortunately, I ended up with an oil leak. Oil dripping down from in between the transmission and the engine block. And sure enough, had to pull the motor, and sure enough, it ended up being the rear main seal. Once again, I had bought one of those cheap kits that has all the seals included. And when I replaced the rear main seal, I used a cheap rear main seal. Rookie mistake for sure, but purchasing the OEM Toyota rear main seal was the solution to that. Put that in, haven't had a problem since. So use the right Toyota parts. That's the main lesson on most of these problems. All right, the next couple issues aren't really problems per se, but just a feel, a personal feel, preference. On the 2GR setups, the clutch and the throttle are very light. And almost like you just use the weight of your foot, and that's all they need. This being a turbo model, of course, it has the turbo clutch pedal, which is assisted. It has additional spring assistance. But that just made the clutch just really soft. So I ended up replacing the clutch pedal for an NA clutch pedal, which loses that spring. That gave me a lot more feel to the clutch, made it a little heavier, but not too heavy. And for me, that really improved the clutch pedal feel. And I've appreciated that change ever since. So I think that was an upgrade to the system. So I would say that that's a fix to the clutch pedal feel. Everyone brings up the throttle pedal feel. It is very, very touchy and very soft. So it doesn't modulate very well. It does make it very easy to heel toe and kind of blip the throttle, but it's very touchy. So what I did a couple things to kind of stiffen up the throttle itself. One, I put a little bracket bridging the throttle to something under the dash to kind of stiffen it up, because it would kind of flex and it wasn't as responsive because of that flex. So I'll show that here in a second. But I also added a physical spring from the throttle to a point up under the dash. So there's physical resistance. And to me, that really gave it a little bit more of a classic MR2 pedal feel. I'm not sure about the implications of that fix or the safety of that fix, but the sensation of that fix is that the throttle feels a little heavier. And so it really matches the clutch a little bit more. And that's how I fixed that. Here's what the spring and the bracket look like. The spring is attached to this little bracket up here, which is just part of the duct work there. And then just goes around the throttle, gives it a little bit of resistance. And then this bracket over here, and you can even see the whole pedal assemblies, the switch assembly moving. But that little bracket gave it a little bit more rigidity, so there wasn't so much flex. Could stand to have more flex, but I mean, less flex. So those were the main issues I had, and those were the main fixes I had. Okay, so there is one more thing about the throttle, and the throttle feel, the throttle modulation. On my next video, I'm going to be trying out this little solution from ATS. Apparently what this little pigtail is supposed to do is to kind of widen the range of the throw. So it modulates the throttle movement to the throttle response. So in other words, instead of getting so much gas so quickly, it's going to get gas a little bit more slowly and be able to push the pedal a little further before you get full throttle opening. So we're going to see how this works and if it's a discernible change. But yeah, that'll be for the next video after this one, I guess.